Namaste and welcome to part one of Hindu Dvesha's webinar series titled America's Caste Wars. The part one is titled Myth versus Reality. My name is Jay Bansal. I'm currently serving as the Vice President of Education for the World Hindu Council of America, more popularly known as the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America. Today, I have the pleasant task of introducing our very knowledgeable panelists to you. However, before I do that, I would like to tell you a little bit about what Hindu Dvesha is what it's about, how it came about, and what it's been doing since its existence. So if you would allow me to share my screen, I have a brief presentation, and then we will turn it over to our panelists for the actual topic itself. So what is hindudvesha.org? Let me begin by simply noting that Hindu identity is under an attack from a variety of directions. Be it the academia, be it the entertainment industry, the news media, social media, or a variety of organized groups, they're all attacking Hindu identity, Hindu icons, Hindu values, our social structures, and our symbols. Their goal is nothing short of really getting rid of the Hindu identity completely and being absorbed into other traditions. Now, what is our response as a Hindu society? Quite frankly, it is one of I do not know or I do not care or both. The existential threat is all around them. They're quite simply not recognizing it. They just, because I think economically our community is doing relatively well, so they just seem to be enjoying that and not have a broader view of the threat to their identity and their tradition altogether. So 2 years ago, some of us got together and we decided we needed to start an educational program on this particular phenomenon, particularly intended for our own community. Really, we're happy to spread the message to the world at large, but really, we would like to educate our own community about this existential threat. So hindudvesha.org was started at the start of 2021. We started with a series of webinars on a variety of issues associated with this phenomenon, and then we segued into actually writing fairly deeply researched articles on this phenomenon. So, if we were to define what our mission is, we would say it is to explore this systematic phenomenon more popularly called Hinduphobia, through research, analysis, and through educational dialogues like the one we're having tonight, and also to responding variety of situations as they arise. We have two key sponsors, my own organization, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, and Dharma Civilization Foundation. And of course, we've also been supported along the way by generous donations from private donors as well. What's in a name? This phenomenon that we are calling Hindu Dvesha actually goes by a variety of names. Hinduphobia is probably the most common. Hindumesia appears here and there. And of course, we decided to pick Hindu Dvesha, which probably is a bit difficult. It doesn't roll off the tongue that easily. But for a variety of reasons, we felt it is technically the most correct term for this phenomenon. I'm not about to get into the name itself and how it came about and what it actually means versus these other terms, but let me just simply say that, colloquially, they're all meant to refer to the same phenomenon, and I think we'll just leave it at that. Now, we've been in existence now for little over 2 years, and so what have we accomplished in those 2 years? And I'll just summarize those very quickly in a couple of slides. First of all, we have been able to raise a virtual team of writers. We have over 20 members in this team. We meet every other week. Of course, this is a volunteer team, so different people come with different strengths and different skills. But nevertheless, we have a team of about 20 writers. We have pretty strong online presence. Our website, hindudvesh.org, has been there for about a year and a half now, and we get about 1,000 unique visitors every month, which is still not big, but I think it's growing as a function of time. We have a nascent presence on the social media, Facebook as well as Twitter, and of course we like it to grow with your support as time goes on. During these 2 years, I'm pleased to say that our team has written more than 250 articles. You can visit our website, read them. They try to cover the gamut of the range of issues on this particular subject. We have also held a number of webinars over the last 2 years, and we've held 2 multi-day conferences during this period. One particular aspect of our website and how the articles are organized is this idea of libraries. We have currently 5 libraries resident on our website, and each library is specialized in particular area. For example, we have a whole library of articles and videos and webinars and so on and so forth on this issue of swastik. We also have one on what Islam has done to our society over historically as well as in modern times. We have another one on the role of academia in creating the Hindu-phobic narrative and in propagating it. We have another library on news media, how it amplifies the Hindu-phobic message, and a lot of times actually creates it. And the latest edition is the one on caste system. This is a library that I'll talk a little bit about on the next slide, but it's more recent, it's growing. And of course, many such libraries are in the works and will be brought online in days to come, or in months to come. Now, on to the caste issue itself. It is the latest hot button issue for the Hindu Americans in particular, but I think Hindu diaspora in general. Now, the caste library on our website is a collection of several original articles written by our own team, and many of them are actually on the panel here tonight, and I'll be introducing them very shortly. And of course, many more such articles are on the way. We are exploring a variety of aspects of this system. Caste is probably not even the right term, and actually we get into that in this library, although we probably won't get too much into it tonight. And of course, we also have a collection of relevant third-party articles on this library. So on to tonight's webinar then. We are focusing tonight's webinar called Myth versus Reality on today's reality. What is the current situation? What is happening with this caste issue, particularly in the North American context, but perhaps even on a more global scale. And then in future webinars, we'll explore many other aspects of this Varna Jati caste construct and how Varna Jati morphed into, or was made to morph into, what we today know as caste. So with that, I'm going to actually very quickly move on to introducing our panelists. But before I do that, let me just remind you how you can help with this initiative and get involved with this initiative. First thing, the resource is there, hindudvesha.org. Please visit it to educate yourself on a variety of subjects and forward what you find interesting to your friends and family and people in your network. Of course, we would love you to visit, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, because more people follow, more people are going to. I mean, the word is going to spread. So this is one way you can help. Of course, you can also volunteer to join our team of writers. If you have a flair for writing, we'll start a survey somewhere in the middle of this conversation, so you can just at that point indicate that you want to be part of it. Finally, you can also support us with your donation. You can just go to the homepage hindudvesha.org and choose the donate now button. So with that, thank you for your patience, and I'm now going to introduce our eminent panelists. So first of all, Kalyan Vishwanath ji, he probably does not need a whole lot of introduction. He is a regular face on these webinars from Hindu University. But let me just say that he is the president of Hindu University of America. Under his leadership, we have seen this institution come back from near-death experience and is now well on its way to become a prominent institution for Hindu studies. I've had the pleasure of working with him on a number of projects over the last 3-4 years, including a coffee table book called Hinduism in America, which we formally released last year around this time. Our next speaker is Dr. Subhash Garg. Subhashji retired from the US space industry in 2009. During his career in that industry, he garnered a number of awards, patents, as well as publications. Since his retirement, he's focused primarily on study and research about the misrepresentation of everything about Hindus in the West. Most recently, he's authored a series of papers on caste, and you can visit our website and read about them. And in future seminars, we will talk about the content of some of these. Our last panelist is Sarabjit Thakurji. So Sarabjit ji is a graduate of IIT Delhi and has master's degrees in computer science and business from Rice and Santa Clara universities, respectively. He is a tech entrepreneur and mentor based in the Silicon Valley. He was raised in a family of Vedic Sanskrit scholars, and he is keenly interested in Hindu civilization, knowledge systems, history, and existential threats currently faced by Hindus worldwide. With that, if I may invite Subhashji to share his presentation, and he will give this presentation on this subject for roughly 30 minutes, Subhashji, and then the rest of us will join in the conversation and we'll take questions and answers as well. Thank you.
Right. Namaste, everyone, and thank you, Jaji, for the introduction. Let me see if I can share my screen here and get it to work. This is the first time I'm giving anything like a webinar, so bear with me if there's some issues in doing this. This presentation is a little bit of a mishmash because there are so many currents and so many cross currents of problems that our community is facing that's kind of difficult to capture in one presentation. So with that, I will start with this slide, which is the power of lies. And obviously, all of us know that Donald Trump lied about the election, and 20 to 50 million people believed him. And the result is this hanging noose looking for Mike Pence to hang him. So my point is that lies are not, harmless. They can cause very real damage. And Mr. Pence escaped very narrowly. If you look at the history of Nazi Germany, this Holocaust and all these things were preceded by several decades of constant lying and misrepresentation of the community. And the community, which was doing very well in Germany, basically ignored them. So there's the history lesson for today. So lies about Hindus, I think this slide is more appropriately called lies about the caste system. And I think in this group, you all are aware of it. is basically a falsehood about caste and the West's power centers. Biggest fallacy being that Brahmins oppress everybody else, and that the four compartments of caste, you cannot go from one to the other. And we know these are all false. Most of all, they say this has not changed for 3,000 years because it's apparently justified in the Vedas, and obviously Vedas are as powerful as the Bible. You can't do anything to change it. And they ignore completely the story of Dalits and other castes in India, which we will talk about a little. Something new that has been added is this diversity, equality, and inclusion industry. We have benefited from that, from the affirmative action programs. But today, inclusion has turned into exclusion. And DEI wants to now exclude the privileged classes, whether you are a vast engineer or whether you are upper class Hindu. They want to exclude you, and that's what they call inclusion. And so naturally, their belief is the caste privilege is rampant in America. Now, some of these things have been dormant for decades. In the last 4 or 5 years, they've come to the surface because of very successful propaganda by certain organizations. And the caste system itself started as a bunch of lies. And again, I'm sure most of you are aware of this. We're all very proud of our jati structure, about our social structure, because it's plural and respects diversity. And so we were able to, and this is a matter of fact, it's not a claim, we were able to integrate diverse groups into one ecosystem. We were also able to resist brutal campaigns against us. And on the contrary, Europe, and I should add maybe Arab and Turkish areas also to this, they are intolerant, or they were, at least when they came to our country, stratified. You could be a lord or a sheikh or a serf/slave, very fundamentalist. They would stone you to death or cut off your hand, and racist. So if you weren't their race, you were scum. So this is their makeup. This is what they brought to our country. And because they had the power, they eventually were able to impose structures, very stratified structures, very unequal structures, such as the caste system and the British caste system. And so, like this picture says, Britain invented caste in India. And the most important part of this is that this is the very last bullet, that they manufactured the vilified Hinduism. So this is a caricature of our scriptures and practices, including the catalog of thousands of castes and 4 or 5 categories, which we are still using. But what passes for Hinduism in the modern secular West? All these universities are now claimed to be secular, Oxford, Harvard, whatever. They have huge endowments, originally religious endowments, but they're all secular. So, but the Hinduism, quote unquote, that these people believe they're staying, and they claim it has nothing to do with the colonial past, is actually a product of the colonial times. That's one thing that's the biggest lie. I mean, the secular Hinduism that they're studying is not really secular. It's really inspired by the evangelists and by the colonial powers. So that's, at least I'm making that claim. Now let's get a little bit more into the lies. What happens is that there are certain mythology that has come up as part of this secular study of Hinduism. And it's all made in England. And this is a poor Hindu guy, or actually the Dalit guy, hanging from the cliff, made in England. So this is really a good representation, I think. So some of these myths that are taken as facts are that, I think the biggest issue is that they claim that our scriptures, starting with the Vedas, mandate this highly unequal system, and there's nothing anybody can do to change it. And so, since the upper caste Hindus have enjoyed caste hegemony, we are ruling by caste privilege, just like the slave drivers in America were ruling in the 17th, 18th century. That's their image. And the lower castes are, of course, confined lifelong to menial jobs. And in spite of their confinement, the upper caste still need to use illegal means to exploit them. So, the myths, if they stay in a book, there's nothing wrong with it. But it actually has a chilling effect on American society. Because in this country, this country is open to change. So any initiative that comes up, and that as long as they conform to all this mythology, they are given a free pass. People agree with them. And anyone who tries to disagree with that is ignored or silenced. And anyone who's written a letter to the editor in this group knows that already. And they own, the white world basically owns most of the means of propagation. So they're able to silence you. So all this is really talking about the caste system so far. I have not gotten into the caste wars yet. I'll do that towards the end of the presentation. And just one digression, if you allow me, is what is the reality of caste in India? Now, we all know the social reality, that it's nowhere near the isolation and the domination that's going on. There is discrimination, yes, but it's not at all the nature that they're saying. And there has been a lot of progress made, starting from the 6th century onwards. There have been reforms in the Hindu system. But today we have this half the school seats in government jobs are reserved. Now, perhaps you know this, but I was surprised to see that the literacy in scheduled castes was tripled over a period of 30 years. And that's a very big accomplishment because of the population growth during that time. And during that time, the population of India more than doubled. And still, we were able to go to 66% literacy. And that's because of this government program. OBC employees, other backward castes, including certain Muslims, they are now at a population percentage that reflects their actual percentage. And the scheduled caste, SC, OBC students in higher education match the percent of population. And so this is as of 2017. So there has been tremendous progress. And it's very inconvenient. It's an inconvenient truth that the West wants to ignore. People like BBC wants to ignore, but it's there. And there's the will to resolve these issues. There's data available every 5 years on the labor force. There's also a caste and religion census that was done in 2011, 80 years after the previous census in 1931. And an issue in this area, which we all know, is there's an achievement gap, because the performance in terms of test scores and grades is of the quota candidates is not that great. And that's actually been held up by Supreme Court decision that said the societal merit for the overall society is what's important, and grades are just one criterion. So this is a fact that the test scores are well below the general average, although there's no data on it because it's supposed to be a private, grades are supposed to be private information. So my point on this chart is that regardless of all the propaganda and all the myth making and all the things that have been done, if you look at India as a whole, India is determined to uplift everyone. India is a very progressive country, and it is nothing like the picture that people tell, the authorities in this country. So now we come to the US. What's happening in the US is a lot of propaganda. And this lady you see here, Tanmauzi Soundarajan, she had a story like Ambedkar. Like Ambedkar was denied a lift ride from the Bombay airport to his village because of his caste, and he got mad. And we all have seen the consequences. She had a similar experience, and so she's been a very strong propagandist and activist. But I don't want to point to her just individually. There's a whole movement. It's supported by all kinds of people. Like Jayaji showed in the slide, there are multiple interests ganging up on us. And this is just one part of it that's relevant to this particular presentation. Now, as you know, they use strong words like apartheid, genocide, slavery, pedophilia. Some of this criticism is Marxist, propaganda is Marxist. But one thing that Soundarajan is very good at is packaging incidents that are in the public domain, but she completely twists them and makes them emotionally horrendous schemes. And this is one example which I don't have time to go into detail, but this is a Berkeley restaurant person named Lucky Reddy, who was arrested mainly for immigration fraud. And the issue was he himself was also charged with sex crimes, but the trafficking and all those charges were about immigration, not about sex. She makes it sound like it was a sex ring, a pedophilia ring, run by the whole family, including the wife and his sons. And she doesn't say anything in this talk at Stanford, where she mentioned this incident, which I've watched the video, and her tone of voice is very, very conspiratorial, very hush hush. So it's just an example. It's just an example of how the propagandists are approaching this subject. They're not trying to be rational or fair or just or anything, or even factual. They're just trying to move people emotionally to take some actions that they want them to take. So this is what's going on. One part of this propaganda comes through data. So if you go to fight a war or fight something, you need data. Remember, there were these WMDs in the Iraq war. Without WMD, there could not have been a war, and it turned out to be false. So in this one, I just want to show you that if you look at this red line, this is a different study, not done by Equality Labs, done by Carnegie Mellon, which shows that 5% of the Hindu population sampled, they report discrimination on the basis of caste, or they perceive discrimination. Whether it is actual discrimination, we don't know. So this is a good thing to keep in mind. If you compare that with Equality Labs, you have 59% of Dalits reporting discrimination at school, 42% at work, and the Brahmins and the other castes, which the blue line is the actual percentage of respondents of the sample. So actually 60% of the sample was Brahmin and other upper castes, and their discrimination report is like 1%, 1 or 2%. So data is clearly manipulated. They don't tell you much about the methodology of the report. I have a background in surveys. I've done some surveys myself, and so there's not much in the report to tell you, but the methods have been criticized. But the point that matters is that their conclusions support the mythology that has been drilled into the American population in school. So their conclusion that Dalits are being, trashed by the upper caste Hindus, people accept it. So if you go to a university or a corporation, they say, "Oh yeah, we heard about this." So they don't have to prove anything. It's a very downhill thing for them. Now, luckily, there is a third-party survey that we can talk about, done by Pew Trusts, which is a non-partisan, non-profit corporation. They surveyed 30,000 adults in India. It's not easy. Having done this myself, I did a survey of 8,000 people in India. It's not easy to do this, and it takes a very large and determined corporation to pull this off. And it's a very impressive report. Please read it if you haven't read it already. The interesting thing is that this independent survey, which is actually from a Western organization, is more partial to the Indian reality than to the propaganda. And this report does not bear out the propaganda at all. And to give you just one example, the religious freedom issue, which the US Commission on International Religious Freedom keeps bringing up, according to this survey, Muslims do not feel threatened or oppressed at all. And there's not much variation across castes or across regions or even religions about this opinion. So even Muslims themselves will tell you that, and other people will tell you. So this report completely rejects what the USCIRF has been still claiming, and the Biden administration decided not to listen to them. So this question, one question was, do you feel free to practice your religion? Very high numbers say yes. Do you respect other religions as a core value? Again, very high percentages say yes. So the bottom line is that although there's propaganda and although there's a conflict between the Indian reality and the myth making, if you look at it objectively, the propaganda and mythology is false, and it's not really valid for India today. So, but when it comes to the US, it's a different story because I showed you that data from Equality Labs and the propaganda, and this is what we are calling the caste wars. Why is called a war? Well, war is a matter of intent. I mean, if your intent is destructive, if you're trying to destroy something, destroy a reputation, destroy a community, then it's a war. If you're just trying to reform, that's a different story. So we're not saying this reform is war, but warfare is destructive. And what is happening is they're attacking the Indian community's hard-earned reputation, well-deserved reputation, on a number of ways. They're presenting propaganda as objective data to convince other organizations. Also attacking the diaspora directly in terms of singling us out. And there's just recently, the Seattle City Council has come up with a proposal to monitor, South Asian community for caste, inequality. I don't know if this will go anywhere, but it's an indication of how serious this attack on us, our community is. And the worst part is that it has crept up on a community that has been unsuspecting. Especially if you look at the second generation, you talk to them. I mean, in their life, they don't worry about caste at all. They don't even know how to spell caste. And yet, suddenly they get hit with the, accusations and all these issues about, what do you know about caste? How come you guys, hate the Dalits? They have no idea what's going on. And they're suddenly in a group that is totally free of caste distinction. They are painted as a pariah in one corner. And this is very real. Talk to them, you'll find out. So it's a very destructive situation. It's not something that you can just easily ignore. At least I don't think it's something you can ignore. And very quickly, to give you some examples, you're probably aware of this. These are some examples in the academic world. This book, Caste of Merit, argues that the IITs are a privilege factory. They take in privileged people, put out privileged people. Now, I was at IIT Kanpur, Sarjeet was at IIT Delhi. And in my batch, at least half the people were not privileged at all. They came from poor families. A lot of them had scholarships. So she's just wrong. And I don't know where she got the idea. But she's at Harvard. And so that one mantra carries a lot of weight. And there's many of these things that I don't really have time to go through. But the MIT has an initiative, Harvard has an initiative, Stanford, Center for South Asia. If you look at this word cloud, you see the terms that are frequently associated with each other. People look at Dalit caste, they also look at Christianity and Christians for some reason. Part of it is that a lot of Dalits are Christians. And there's Stanford here, Oxford is right here. The important part on this chart is the California State University, which is a huge, great big system of universities. And they have gone ahead and decided to add caste to their non-discrimination clause. So, in every policy in this country has a Title VII sentence that says discrimination is not allowed on the basis of, gender, race, identity, national origin, all those things. They want to put caste. They have gone ahead and put caste in it. The objection to that is that caste is specifically connected to Hindus, and they're actually pointing to one religion and singling it out. So, going beyond the academic sphere, if you look at corporations, Apple is an example. They have banned caste discrimination. Politics, we're showing Shama Sawant, who was in a class by herself for destructive anti-Hindu politics. And she's brought in a new initiative just recently. The Cisco case that most of you probably have heard about, the Dalit engineer suing Cisco for firing him, according to him, because he's the wrong caste. And the Hindu American Foundation is supporting Cisco, and the state of California is supporting the Dalit engineer in this case. Media, you know all about the media. I just picked this one because it has a good picture, or bad picture from the Atlantic. And religion comes in, Christians are very interested in it. Equality labs again, in Dalit rights, it has come in. One thing I want to point out on the activism is that Dalit Lives Matter. It's patterned after Black Lives Matter, which is fine. But number one, their histories and their issues are very different. Number two, Barack Obama became president. He didn't become president by hating the white community. He became president by, courting everyone. But these people, some of the Dalit rights people, equality lab, seems to me, just in my personal opinion, they are trying to leverage hate and not love, not functionality. They're trying to say these guys are bad, so put them down, bring me in, and that is really not going to work. I don't think it's going to work. So I think this is pretty much the overview of caste wars. You can actually go into much more detail on each of these pictures, and please, if you're interested in the subject, Google it, look it up, and get a better idea of what we as a community are up against. And it's going to affect every one of us. It's not that some people are going to be left out. So, so in a nutshell, let's look at what is the threat posed by these caste wars. Let me start with the middle thing. The trend to add this caste to the non-discrimination clauses is likely to continue, because it sounds very simple. Just add one word to it, no big deal. But there's a Pandora's box that you're opening that no one thinks about right now. Caste oppression, I think, is more potent, a more potent issue because of the pre-programmed aversion to the caste system and because of long-established chain of lies that are going on. So people relate to it. It's easier to take action based on it. So it's different from the typical WhatsApp forward you get about, Modi ji or Yogi ji or something. Those things don't impact us in this country and don't impact the Indian election either. They just, BBC documentary is not going to affect Modi's, chances in the election. But this sort of thing will affect us, will affect the next generation and then grandchildren. And if caste becomes a major issue with corporations, they may be reluctant to hire Hindus because of litigation risk. The H-1B engineers will be hurt. The US economy will be hurt because it depends a great deal on the Indian engineers. And there'll be bullying and so forth. So it's the reason we should handle this on a war footing, in my opinion, is because it's a direct threat, and it can happen fairly quickly. Because, for example, if the Seattle City Council decides to put a special monitoring body for South Asians because of caste, and every school will have little classes on this. What does it mean? Why are you doing it? Why is caste here? And then you will see very quickly, if Ms. Sawant had their way, very quickly you'll see your grandkids in the Seattle area suffering the consequences. So it's not something academic. How do you fight back? I think the script is the same for no matter what the issue is. You petition organizations that are doing this. You take action against activists. You engage the political process. But in this case, the most important thing to do is to get a real professional survey of caste issues in this country, because there does not exist any report that does that. The Equality Labs report that passes for a report is really just propaganda. So this, I believe something is happening along these lines. I don't know what, but it's very important. So I think that's pretty much coming to closing the seminar. These caste, which used to be just an academic issue, has become a weapon. It's being used to divide our community, being used to create policies that are not in our best interest. And it's happening mainly, partly because racial theories in this country, like critical race theory and the 1619 project and all that, they have made this inequality, social inequality, a paying proposition. I mean, people can get PhD in it, people can get jobs in it, politicians can make careers in it. So, and that theory, the whole set is being brought into caste now. And India has massive efforts to raise caste inequality are invisible, although they're pretty easy to see but nobody wants to see them. And so we say education and counteractivism needed to combat the power of lies. I think most of these words came from Sarojit Ji, and I like them. So there is activism is being fueled by everybody, like academia, media. We've seen that before. So this would jeopardize our future. There's a couple of things I want to point out here. One is this concept of ethnocide. And the way I understand that is that it's not killing you off physically, but killing off your culture and your religion. And starting with Macaulay, a long time ago, they've been doing this. And Macaulay's system was very successful in India, in British India. People are now waking up. But in these countries, in the Western world, they would rather not have people who worship idols and worship cows and don't cut them. So, I mean, from the religious establishment, which is very powerful, there is a strong incentive. There's a lot of cultural incentive. So, probably the long-term risk and the long-term objective is to kill off Hindu culture and Hindu religion and converting us all internally by reprogramming our brains. I mean, it sounds very sinister, and I can't prove it, but it makes sense to me. The second thing I want to mention is this Santa Clara County. This was a great example. This county is Silicon Valley, so all the software companies from Apple to Zoom, are here, and it's mostly run powered by South Asians. So somebody went to the county and said, bar discrimination on the basis of caste in the entire county. And our community was successful in changing the county's mind. There were a number of hearings and presentations, and I put in something too. And this is the sort of success story that can be repeated in other parts of the country, including Seattle, if the community comes together and acts in a proper way. So hopefully this will happen going forward. So I will close this with this little cartoon where this guy goes to a world with their two sons. In our world, there are two Hinduisms. There's one Hinduism that I put in quote unquote, that's the Western view of it. That's a closed system. That's like they were studying Hindus like Mary Leakey and was studying apes in the African jungle. These guys were studying Hindus. And they didn't expect Hindus to actually speak up. So, but now that there's a gap between their view of Hinduism and what Hinduism really is, and it's very unfortunate. And it's like if you went from this world to the red world and they're writing about you, and you say, well, that's wrong. They say, well, who are you? I'm the guy you're writing about. So what do you know? We'll tell you who you are. So that's pretty much the situation that's going on. So I'll close this. This link is a link to the Caste articles. I've put my email address here. If you have any feedback, especially negative feedback, please send it to me so I can learn from it about this talk or about anything. So I think with that, this is presentation is closed.
Thank you. Yeah, you can actually stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
And I will actually invite the other two panelists to chime in with their comments. But before that, I would request Arvindji, who is providing the technical support for this webinar, to start a small poll asking our audience if they want to, if they would like to be part of this effort as a writer or in some other ways. So you can just, over the next few minutes, just quickly say yes, no, or you need more information, and then we'll try to connect with you. So with that, there are a few questions in the Q&A box. We will address them in due course. And please keep adding your questions there in the Q&A box only. We will not be taking them from the chat room. However, with that, may I invite Sarabjit Ji to give his perspective on the subject, and then I'll ask Kalyan Ji, and we'll, I guess, open the floor that way. You're on mute, Sarjeet.
Okay, thank you. Just have a couple of comments. Subhashji talked about the morphing of the Varna Jati system into caste, which is really a Spanish and Portuguese word. And I'd like to point out that hereditary and hierarchical class systems happen to be part of all societies and all cultures. The British nobility and the commoner division is pretty well known. The casta or the caste amongst the Spanish and the Portuguese is also well known. Amongst Muslims, there are classes. For instance, the ones that claim their origin directly as descendants of Prophet Muhammad are called Ashrafs. The converts of Indian origin, which is most of the Muslims of the subcontinent, are called Ajlafs. And then there are Arzals, who are the lowest caste amongst Muslims. And these are called Qawms, which is like caste. So the caste system exists, or some kind of a hierarchical and hereditary caste system exists in most societies, most religions. And Hinduism is being attacked and singled out because of many, many vested interests. For example, the missionaries were totally frustrated when they tried to convert Hindus into Christianity a couple of hundred years ago. It's pretty well documented by missionaries like Robert Caldwell, who was totally frustrated, and he says, but for the caste system, we would be a lot more successful in converting Hindus into Christianity. There was a census in 1921, and I'll quote one of the censor organizers, or actually officials who conducted the censor, named Mr. Middleton. I forget his first name. And I'll quote him. He said, "We pigeonholed everyone by caste." This is in the 1921 census of India. Pigeonholed everyone by caste. And if we could not find a true caste for them, label them with the name of a hereditary occupation. We deplored the caste system and its effects on social and economic problems, but we are largely responsible for the system that we deplore. So the British, first of all, they impoverished the so-called lower caste by industrializing Britain and disindustrializing India. So the ones who were impoverished and became the lower caste were actually doing quite well materially. They were artisans, they were farmers, they were metal workers, they were weavers, they were potters, they were technicians. They were impoverished, first of all, and then they ended up, as India's GDP dropped from 25 to 30% of the world GDP to about 2 to 3% by the end of the British rule. These guys were impoverished, and then they became the lower castes, and the Brahmanism, so far the Brahmanic tyranny was cooked up to be responsible for that. So that's some of the historical background. Now coming back to today, I think Subhashji mentioned that in the United States, the caste wars that we are looking at, there are some key players like Equality Labs. And by the way, I attended personally in my neighborhood at the Villa Montalva a couple of months ago, a presentation by Equality Labs, and Thanmozi Soundarajan was there, the main presenter. It was organized by our successful diaspora Hindus. Some of my friends invited me to attend. And I just asked her one simple question, after she was done. I said, you've done your survey, and that seems to be biased given that you had a vested interest in it. And then we have this survey from Pew Research, which seems to be independent and objective. which has totally different results and outcomes. Why should I trust yours versus theirs? She did not answer the question. She asked me to sit down and went to the next question. So that is today's left. The liberals who are supposed to champion the freedom of speech would not even answer a question, let alone bring somebody with a different perspective up to speak about some of these issues. So the liberalism of the left has become the tyranny of the left, in my opinion. And this starts at a university like Harvard and the prestigious schools, other Yale, Oxford, Stanford. Unfortunately, with a lot of the funding coming from Indian industrialists like the Mittals and some of the others, and Mahindras, and then they do social, they do studies of the Indian social structure, and caste is obviously one of the main themes. And people like Ajanta Subramanian, whose book I think Subhashji quoted, and there's another gentleman called Suraj Yangde. He's aspiring to be the next Bhimrao Ambedkar. He's also at Harvard. So they are the ones who are funded by the Indian billionaires themselves, and the funding goes into creating, critical race theory and critical caste theory and critical Dalit theory and attacking India. And then, of course, the Indian equivalent of the liberal academia, Ashoka University, Kriya University, and so forth, they join the band, and it propagates back in India. In contrast, there's a lot of Chinese endowment, a lot more than the Indians. Chinese give a lot of money to Harvard and MIT and so forth, but it is limited to STEM research only, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. They do not allow any of these funding to go into any kind of a research of the Chinese social structures. That is, no, absolutely not. So they're actually benefiting from the funding that goes into STEM because the research obviously helps the Chinese economy and the Chinese development of technology, while we Indians and the Indian supporters of these institutions are actually doing nothing but hurting us in India as well as the diaspora here, the Hindu causes. So those are some of the comments I had. And I'll turn over to, I guess, back to Jayji.
Yeah, thank you, Sarabjit, for those very thoughtful comments. So, Kalyanji, your turn now, please.
Yeah, I would like to address the questions in the Q&A box. Now, in particular, right, the presence of this discrimination as a real phenomenon versus the narrative about its ubiquitous and being an intrinsic feature of Hinduism. There is a discrepancy there, and I'd like to first of all clarify that you see, wherever there is a discrimination based on any kind of identity, I don't think Hinduism will ever promote that. Okay, and if at all, the Varna Jati social structure was fundamentally based upon the character and conduct of an individual. Character and conduct. Character I am translating as guna, Sanskrit word guna. And conduct I am translating the word karma, guna karma vibhagashaha in the Bhagavad Gita. Now, in contrast, the word casta, as it came into being in Spain and Portugal, it arose within the context of uh, the Spanish and Portuguese conquest of Latin America and the North America, where there was definitely the concern around maintaining racial purity. So there were the whites who were the Spanish, there were the Indians, so-called, who were the mixed, the browns, so to speak, and then there were the Africans who brought over as slaves, and they were the blacks. And the concerns around maintaining racial purity. Can you mute people? Yeah. The concerns around maintaining racial purity, primarily racially based, is what generated the Portuguese and Spanish Sistema de Casta. There's a whole hierarchy of finely enumerated castas that came into being during the encounter of Europe with the Americas. And the Varna Jati system in India, the social structure in India, was then overlaid with the terminology of casta. And this specifically creates enormous distortion in our own our own understanding of our social order. And this is one of the challenges. The way the challenge manifests itself is in the form of this question: are we denying the presence of discrimination in Hindu society? Right? Are you whitewashing it? Are we pretending that discrimination doesn't exist in Hindu society? It's very important to get to the root of this question. The first answer is no, we're not. And in fact, where there is discrimination, it is very important to take the appropriate level of corrective measures, corrective actions, corrective policies to mitigate it, to address it, to reduce the impact of such discrimination, etc. And that is largely being done in India, much more so in India, and obviously much less in the United States, because the problem is just not as severe in the US. However, the idea that Hinduism intrinsically promotes discrimination, that it is philosophically discriminatory, is what is the lie that Subhashji was speaking about, is the propaganda that we fall victim to, and we all believe that discrimination is somehow a feature of Hinduism. I'll give you an analogy. Okay, one of the ways of understanding this is in the following way. We all know now, and all of us are experiencing this, that the rampant increase in gun-related violence, gun-related deaths, is extremely problematic in US society today. I mean, every day there is a new incident of people being killed randomly for no reason at all. Right? Nobody can deny this. Now, suppose we abstract, just look at the data, look at the graph of how gun-related violence has been expanding in the United States of America, and we draw a conclusion from that, saying that, well, the American people are a murderous people. They just murder for each other for no reason at all. Suppose we say that, would that be a valid conclusion or a valid theory about what's happening? It wouldn't. Why? Because we all recognize that the gun-related violence are exceptions, are abnormalities, are you know, they are exceptions to the norm and not the norm. Okay. But if somebody were to sustain a narrative saying that, it is the norm in American society to kill people randomly every day, few people. I mean, statistically speaking, more than 100 people, 120 people are dying every day in America due to gun-related violence. Statistically speaking, that is irrefutable. So if you sustain a narrative called it is the norm in American society to kill people randomly with guns and show the data to prove that, we would not be wrong either. Okay. So what am I saying here, really? Right? There is a narrative and then there is the data. In the case of the caste-based discrimination, the narrative is using exceptions to demonstrate a norm. I hope this is communicating. Okay. We use exceptions to demonstrate that this is how Hindu society is in its entirety. And because we are not able to distinguish exceptions from the norm, we fall prey very easily to the generated narrative about Hindu society being discriminatory in its design. And I think this is a matter that needs a very nuanced clarification and a proper understanding, which our own society, in most cases, does not have adequately. And therefore, in many cases, we ourselves are confused about the distinction between the reality on the ground and the narrative that we have to constantly deal with. Okay. And I think this is just a simple way of understanding the problem of narrative, the sharp deviation, the dichotomy between reality and the narrative about that reality. And I'll stop here because this needs a lot more clarification, elaboration. Sure. And then we can take some questions.
Thank you, Kalyanji. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A box, and I will attempt to answer maybe one or two of them. I think they're sort of together. So the questions are from Sophia Ledo. She's saying she's seen some research indicating there is a sports link between the Shudras and the Gypsy people. My understanding is, I think at this point, there is little doubt that the so-called Gypsies or the Roma people are of Indian origin. I think there is pretty strong evidence to that. What I have not ever heard of the connection between them and so-called Shudras. My understanding is that during the Islamic period, there was a huge disruption to the Indian society. Families killed without any reason, villages burned, professions destroyed, properties taken, homes burned, and a large section of this, Hindu society, in millions, they had to leave their traditional dwellings and just to save their lives. Many of them, they went into forests to forage from the forest. Many of them left the country. Through Afghanistan, eventually into Europe. So it is entirely possible that the Roma people are a part of that entire movement of people that was caused by this major disruption during the Islamic period. So I will leave it at that unless someone wants to chime in with any build on that. There is another question from Sophia ji. I think that's been answered more or less, but let me just add a bit. And she's saying, what would you say about the treatment given to Dalits in general, both in India and abroad? So I think a lot of the nuances of this question have been answered already by Sarvjit ji and Kalyan ji. I would say this. I think, the Indian society, right from the get-go, India got its independence from the British colonial rule in 1947. In 1951, the Constitution of India was put into force, and this problem was recognized head-on. And in fact, so-called affirmative action plans put in place, very strong affirmative action plans put in place right from the get-go. Every single adult, within the nation of India was given voting rights, which is something that actually did not happen in the West for a very long period of time afterwards. So voting rights were given. The reservation system is so strong in India. I think Subhashji's covered that in his main presentation, but it is so strong today. In fact, it's so pervasive, I would say, that so-called people from so-called higher castes, if you want to use caste as a criteria, they want to be classified as Shudras or the scheduled caste. So I think you can judge from that the kind of social justice that's being delivered in the Indian society as we speak. Now, when it comes to the so-called treatment of Dalits abroad, I don't know what anyone is talking about, because I don't know if I've ever talked about caste in any social setting or any work setting in my 54 years of being in this country. And I would venture to say that my children, they're all grown up now, they don't know what their caste is. In fact, they probably don't even know what the word means. So I don't know what we're talking about when we talk about treatment of Dalits in the West by Hindu society. So I think that's my answer. And if one of the other panelists wants to add bits to it, please feel free to do so.
I would add something very quickly to that, if I may. Jaji, since Jaji mentioned the reservations in Indian employment as well as education systems and businesses, I know, being from IIT and so is Subhashji, we are coming under attack right now that the meritocracy at the IITs is being equated to casteism, and the privilege of the upper caste is being pointed out. But the distinction that is not being made is in the opportunity and the outcomes. The reservations can guarantee a certain percentage of applicants to be admitted to the institutes of higher learning, like the IITs, for instance, but it cannot guarantee the outcome. So what happens a lot of times is that, unfortunately, the scheduled castes or the other backward classes, the Dalits, because their issues are not addressed from the primary education and the pre-K education, the school level, and so forth, they don't have the culture and the foundation, but they do get admitted, and then they are not fully prepared, and many of them fail to even graduate. So that's the unfortunate part, and I think the new education policy of India that they are adopting now is trying to address that. How to improve the pre-K and the primary education so that you have a better foundation before you get admitted to higher institution of higher learning. So being from IIT, I know that is an issue that has been raised, that not too many engineers coming out. Yes, but they're going in and they are not coming out because they're not well prepared, unfortunately.
I want to just add one more comment to that. I think that will change over time. And but in the meantime, I think the people who are benefiting from this quota are being cheated. I mean, they get a degree, but they don't get what the degree stands for. And that's really not in their interest.
Thank you, Sarji ji. Subhashji. Kalyanji, you want to add anything to that, or should we move on to something else?
Yeah, I would add one thing. When we translate Varna and Jati in Sanskrit into the word caste and its various nuances, backward caste, upper caste, lower caste, forward caste, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and the entire language structure associated with caste as it got implemented, which, by the way, does not exist in the Hindu text at all, right? What is the nature of the specific distortion that gets introduced? Okay, so I think it's useful to consider that. My proposition is that the Varna Jati structure of Hindu society, it emphasized cooperation, collaboration, coexistence, and the possibility of harmony amongst communities. Okay. The moment that gets translated as caste, it gets overloaded with ideas of oppression, dominance, discrimination, power, privilege, status, and so on, which are not associated with Varna Jati. And to distinguish this, we must do a much more detailed study of the way Varna and Jati is represented. Because now we have, for more than 150, 200 years now, we have been living with this terminology called caste. It is very difficult to penetrate for most of us to get to a point of clarity here. Okay, so this is just, and may I add one more point here? The propaganda around caste-based discrimination is so intense today. It exists mostly in a data-free world. Data-free world, in the sense that there is no, if you start looking for real documented instances of recognized discrimination, there'll be very few to in terms of real data. Beyond the cooked up surveys of which just want to show that there is tremendous discrimination in the Hindu community already. So I think I'll conclude with those 2 points. JJ, give it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So Padmaji has a comment basically saying that the best strategy is to recruit our children born here to fight the caste battles because ultimately it's going to affect them. I totally agree with you. In fact, we would love to get our next generation involved in all the Hindu issues that they're going to inherit after we pass on. But it's a monumental task, and it's very, very difficult to engage our next generation because they're being taught in the world of wokeism, and they're basically it's just very difficult to connect with them. But we're not losing heart. We continue to make the effort, through our various organizations. So I think we are well past the hour. It's 15 minutes, roughly 15 minutes past. And I think we've had a fairly rich conversation. We've answered most of the questions in the Q&A box. If anyone has any further comments and they want, if someone wants to connect with us, have conversations, please write to us at info@hindudvesha.org. I'll put it in the chat room, and we will try to get to you, as soon as possible. And of course, we always welcome your participation, your volunteering for helping with this project through your writings, sharing your thoughts, and of course, donations never go to waste either. So, thank you so much for your time, for being part of this conversation, and I look forward to seeing you all again next time we meet on this subject. Hopefully in maybe 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. But we'll announce it well in time. So with that, thank you once again, and we shall close with that. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste, everybody.